From the Oklahoma newsroom, it is time for the Red Zone, our weekly extended look at Oklahoma football. And boy, do we have some stuff to talk about, guys. I'm Jenni Carlson here in studio with fellow columnist Barry Tramel, OU beat writer Ryan Aber. Well, we knew there was going to be news trickling out, but it came in a deluge on Wednesday morning, Ryan. Let's start with the big headline, and actually a big headline. We actually got this one out of the way right now. Jalen Hurts coming to Oklahoma. Hurts so good. We'll not use that hammerhead again, but big news for the Sooners to get Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They needed a bridge from Kyler Murray to likely Spencer Rattler, the five-star incoming recruit, who's not going to be here till June. And Jalen Hurts checked all the boxes. He's got a winning pedigree. He doesn't throw the ball as well as Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield does, but neither Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray threw the ball as well as they did when they arrived at Oklahoma. And Lincoln Riley's offense is so flexible to be able to take advantage of what Jalen Hurts does well. He's able to run the ball effectively. We've seen Lincoln Riley, as Barry wrote on a blog yesterday, I believe, that the way that Lincoln Riley can meld his offense. We saw the way he used Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon early in his tenure. We saw the way he transformed Baker Mayfield in the quarterback run game as he went along. Mm-hmm. So it seems like a good fit.
Well, and it has been, when you look at this offense, I mean, they throw it around. You got to have accuracy, which, it's going to be a work in progress with Hurts, but it looks like Lincoln Riley will be able to work this out. But this is a different, or at least from the outset, it looks like a different test for his offense.
Oh, no doubt about it. Jalen Hurts can't throw like Baker Mayfield. He can't throw like Kyler Murray. And I am taking suggestions on who can. That's where you deal with what you got and you deal with what your options are. You can't go into the laboratory and say, hey, get me another Kyler Murray. So I think it is a great fit for the Sooners. It will test Lincoln Riley. It will test Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts, he's going to be doing two things that he didn't do in Alabama. He's going to be working with a quarterback whisperer, a great guru, and he's not going to be throwing against the Georgia and LSU defensive backs. He's going to be throwing against guys that can't cover quite as well.
He's not going to have the Georgia and LSU defensive linemen chasing after him.
That's exactly right. So, unfortunately, he's not going to have the Oklahoma offensive line guarding. Those all guys went to the NFL. So it's going to be a brave new world, but it's fascinating. To me, it's the best case scenario for the 2019 Sooner football team, trying to go from the Mayfield-Murray era to the Spencer Rattler era.
Well, Barry, you wrote about Jalen Hurts for page 1A if people have a chance to read it. This is a guy that is very unique. I mean, he won a lot of games. He led Alabama to sort of that next level of greatness. They were already winning championships, and then he sort of accelerated their offense, but became a guy that he comes from the Death Star, and people actually like this guy. What an interesting character.
He did the impossible. He became he made an Alabama football player sympathetic, sort of the underdog. He's America's hero in a lot of ways this postseason for the way he handled himself, getting demoted, coming back to lead Alabama in the SEC title game to beat Georgia, and then steps back while Tua returns and beats Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl. So just an exemplary character guy. And if you're going to bring in a new guy to take over your team, this is the perfect model. In fact, most coaches would say, give me the great talent, the beautiful thrower. But some coaches would also say, you know what? I'll sacrifice a little of that technical stuff for the intangibles of leadership and character. So in all, just a win-win-win for everyone.
Well, and Ryan, obviously we're well aware of the on-field exploits of Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, but over the time that they were in Norman, we came to realize what an imprint they put on the locker room. And they did have some other really good players, some other really good leaders with them. But Jalen Hurts is going to continue that, at a time when Austin Kendall, we'll get to him in a second, is looking to transfer. That was what we had sort of heard, and now it's pretty much assured. But even, had he stayed, there's a lot of young guys behind him that needed some leadership, would need, some shepherding. Seems like Jalen Hurts is going to be a really good guy in that regard.
Yeah, there was certainly a leadership vacuum on that team had Jalen Hurts not come in. Losing Kyler Murray, even though he wasn't around much this year, a guy like Rodney Anderson, and that whole offensive line with Ben Powers and Drew Samia, especially with how long they've been established, but also Cody Ford and Bobby Evans, who'd been around a while as well. So this is an offense that needed a leader, and now they've got it in Jalen Hurts.
One more thing on Hurts as far as on field before we get to other Sooner topics. Guys, we know he is a runner, sort of in the maybe not exactly the vein of Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray is so slippery.
Again, like Barry said, who is?
Yeah, who is? But I was actually went looking and found some numbers. He ran a 4.43 in the 40 a couple years ago at an Alabama testing event, which I don't even know what that means, other than Alabama gets to show off how fast and strong their guys are. But that mark he ran in the 40 at that point would have beaten every other quarterback in the NFL Combine that same year. This guy's actually pretty fast. I mean, I think we can safely say, Ryan, we're going to see more quarterback run game, but this guy seems like, while he may not be as fast as Kyler Murray, he's going to be pretty able in that ability.
Yeah, and he's got some power behind it, too. I wrote in a 5 things to know about Jalen Hurts piece today that Jalen Hurts was also a really good power lifter in high school, so he's got some power behind him. We saw that a little bit in the Orange Bowl with a couple runs that he had. Well, a run and a catch that he had from Tua Tagovailoa. So this guy can do, I think, a little bit more than a lot of people give him credit for.
Barry, the one thing I wonder a little bit about, now the success pretty much makes this seem not that relevant, but the fact that Oklahoma has gone transfer in Baker Mayfield, transfer in Kyler Murray, now transfer in Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Does there need to come a point where Lincoln Riley is developing high school recruits into his starting quarterbacks? Does that ever become problematic, or does the success just make that irrelevant ultimately?
Well, the answer is they might be able to survive without it, but you don't want to. In some ways they've become the Yankees in that they attract free agents. Lincoln Riley's status is such that, hey, just if you got an opening to transfer, you don't like your current situation, Oklahoma's where you want to be. But ideally, that you would get into the carousel of developing your own talent, because let's be frank, let's say Jalen Hurts was not on the open market this year. And nothing else had changed, the Sooners might be sort of grasping. I mean, Austin Kendall would probably still be here and be the quarterback, and might turn out to be great. But you want it on both ends. You want to be able to develop your young guys, and that's what they think they're doing with not just Spencer Rattler, but Tanner Mordecai. But you also have this great beneficiary of developing. Of attracting the free agents. And that's really what it is. The graduate transfer rule is free agency come to college football. And it's done what every other free agency explosion in sport has done, just created a wild interest in the offseason. So it's a great thing for the players to give them more freedom, and some schools like Oklahoma at the quarterback position now have, and other people have doing it at a lot of other positions, is taking advantage of it.
Well, one of those guys that came in as a high school quarterback, Ryan, and was being developed through the pipeline, now looks to be leaving, is Austin Kendall, a guy that, not so long ago was apparently locked in a quarterback battle with Kyler Murray, loses out, looks to be the next guy in line, then puts his name in the transfer hopper to say, I'm available potentially. But you've talked to a few people. It sounds to me, Ryan, like he put his name out there, but it wasn't a for sure until he knew Jalen Hurts was coming out. And obviously there's a lot of other moving parts maybe too. Okay.
Yeah, there is. One, he didn't put his name in the transfer portal until Oklahoma pursued Jalen Hurts. He was planning on staying and competing for the starting job. I think he would have been the favorite had Jalen Hurts not arrived. But also, even after they started their pursuit of Jalen Hurts, there was a question over whether Austin Kendall would transfer or not. And I know a lot of people believe he would have transferred anyway, but his preference was to stay. And if Oklahoma wouldn't have landed Jalen Hurts or wouldn't have played things the way that it wound up playing out, then Austin Kendall stays. After he asked for a transfer to West Virginia, Oklahoma said no, and that sort of pushed him away, that he was going to leave regardless of whether they got Jalen Hurts or not. Now, it worked out really well for all parties because Oklahoma lands Jalen Hurts. They grant him the waiver to be able to be eligible at West Virginia immediately as a graduate transfer. He's a guy who graduated in 3 years. There's still a question over where he'll wind up. He's not set in stone to West Virginia. He's going to visit there later this week, but we'll see what happens. But it could be Austin Kendall versus Jalen Hurts in next Big 12 season.
Well, and you bring up how things went down, and part of what happened yesterday was this whole question of Oklahoma blocking Austin Kendall to West Virginia, and maybe some other schools that they were going to be playing. Barry, Oklahoma has benefited from so many transfers. They got the rule changed within the Big 12 as it related to Baker Mayfield so he could have an extra year. It seemed very hypocritical to me to block a guy. They can do it. It's within the rules. But it just seemed shady at the time.
Well, it's a terrible look, and here's the deal. You're going to lose. You lose in the court of public opinion, and frankly, the criticism comes from so many places. Virtually everyone capitulates. So why do it in the first place? I mean, OU is smarter than that. Lincoln Riley is smarter than that. I don't know what they were thinking in the first place. There was no way they were going to be able to hold on to that exclusion on West Virginia. So just a misstep by the Sooners, no doubt about it. The same kind of development. You say, well, we invested in this guy, money, time, resources, all those things. Yeah, and so did Alabama. There's a better chance. There's a better chance that Jalen Hurts can inflict damage on on Oklahoma next season than Austin Kendall can inflict damage on the Sooners. West Virginia's in rebuild mode. If you got to worry about West Virginia coming to Owen Field and beating you next year, you got a lot more problems. So, bad look for the Sooners. Nod to you, salute you for a quick reversal, but you should have never taken that stance in the first place.
Plus, he did it as a graduate transfer. It's one thing if it's
right.
just a guy who's transferring after a year or two. This is a guy who did everything academically that he was asked to do, graduated graduated in 3 years, as I mentioned. To me, it's hard to make an argument that you should be able to restrict a graduate transfer.
Yeah, obviously.
If you're going to have the rule in the first place.
Right. Obviously, Oklahoma changed course at the end of the day, but it created a lot of not good press for them on a day when they didn't necessarily need that or didn't need it at all. Before we get out of here, real quick, this seems crazy to have this be a side note, a footnote at the end of our conversation today, but the defensive staff is being rebuilt, guys, which is obviously, while Hurts transferring to Oklahoma is huge, what happens on the defensive side is going to be so critical for this next season and moving forward. Can they rebuild this thing? Ryan, it looks like they might be where they are now with this coaching staff. Where do things stand at this moment?
Well, yeah, they hired Roy Manning from UCLA, who had been a linebackers coach there, as Oklahoma's cornerbacks coach. He coached cornerbacks for a year at Michigan, his alma mater, a couple years ago, but worked with Grinch at Washington State. He's going to coach corners. It looks like Alex Grinch is going to coach the safeties. And then they hired Brian Odom, a guy who was not a walk-on. He was a scholarship guy, a red shirt is what I meant to say, on that 2000 national championship team. He is going to coach the outside linebackers, or inside linebackers, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting my inside and outside confused.
You've had a little bit going on the last few days. It's all right.
But it looks like there's a good chance that Ruffin McNeil winds up coaching the outside linebackers, and that Oklahoma's defensive staff was set. There were some questions about Ruffin McNeil. It looks like he's going to stick around. Bob Diaco is the sort of the odd man out in that scenario. But guys that Alex Grinch is very familiar with, both guys that he coached with at Washington State, and that defense had all kinds of success. Yeah. So we'll see if they're able to replicate that in some regards here.
Well, Barry, that's obviously the great question, is we have to wait and see for actual results in this whole thing. But so far, is it a passing grade with what we've seen in this revamp of the Oklahoma defense? I
like it. The newcomers check all the boxes. Alex Grinch seems like a fabulous candidate. You don't never know about the assistants. Who knows? But you want young, energetic, big-time recruiters, guys that have a past with Alex Grinch, which all these guys do. So it looks like exactly what Oklahoma needed. They needed a transfusion. They needed a transfusion on the defense. Get rid of the old culture, get in the new. Just whatever was going on was not working. Time to start over. Maybe not a complete start over, but close to it. So I think it all turned out pretty well, about as much as you could hope for concerning Lincoln Riley's defensive staff.
All right, let's hope for a quieter news day, guys. That's it for the Red Zone for this week. Lots to talk about with the Sooners. Who knows? Maybe we'll have more come next week. I can't imagine, though, we'll have another earth-shattering day like we had on Wednesday. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.